Well, thank you so much for your time and welcome to our first Bleat beta kickoff call. Thank you also for kicking off us in prayer, Tim. Thank you for joining all of you and making sure this time is something that we can serve you guys in the future with. I wanted to admit that this is not just about building a product. We wanted to build Bleat, but this is not about building Bleat for us. It's about building Bleat for you. We're going to take some time today to talk about what Bleat is and what we're hoping to serve the church with. But like I said, this is about building Bleat for you. And so I want to start with you. I want to ask if we can all just take 1 minute to tell us your names, tell us where you're from, where your church is, which church you're a part of, and tell us one cool thing that happened this past Easter weekend. Maybe you baptized 5 million souls, or maybe something interesting happened in church. Tell us one thing. I'll start. My name is Korean Baby Kuri. It's if you see my profile says 40 parables, but hopefully you received an email from me. And if it's a name that you can't pronounce, it's because my parents were not thinking. And I live in Dallas with my wife and 2 kids. This past Easter weekend was not fun for me because our entire family was down with sickness. I had a sore throat. I just began talking 2 days ago, but my wife and kids were able to go to church and they said it was a blast. So I'm thankful for that. So that's me. I'm looking forward to enjoying the season with you folks. And so I'd love to have the next person introduce yourself and get going.
Well, I'm Dale Peak. I'm actually not a pastor. Well, I'm sort of a pastor, but I'm the administrator at the church. I met Kieran at ex-pastor in February and was very intrigued by this. I'm in Sterling, Virginia, which is right outside of DC. We're about 5 minutes north of Dulles Airport, if you know where that is. And Easter, well, Easter was a kind of a surprise. We had an overflowing crowd for the first time in 2 years. And it was a real blessing. We also did a baptism and a testimony, which we don't normally do. And they both went over very, very well. It's very well done. Good to see so many people here for a change.
Thanks, Dave.
My name is Micah Warren. I'm from Newport Richey, Florida, which is just outside of Tampa, and been here for 12 years now. And the church is similar to what Dale said. This last Easter, we had just an explosive. It was the highest Easter we've had pre-COVID, just in bar none. So we just were really thrilled with the weekend experience that we had. It was a big family event on Saturday, Good Friday service, big family event on Saturday, which we've been experimenting. We've done this several times now with a community market on Saturday, which brings a lot of critical mass to the property. People in the community come in and their local businesses, and we had about 100 something vendors out here, and it just had that partnered with our Easter egg hunt and big old thing for the family, lots of stuff for them, bounce houses and whatnot. But that was a phenomenal success. And then Sunday was another really successful venture for us. And so kind of the trifecta, for us, three days, but we were all smoked, took off Monday, and we're back at the grind here today. So that's a little bit about our church and this past weekend.
Micah, I'm going to be in Spring Hill next week. You know where that is?
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. That's about 15 minutes from me. That's not far at all.
Got to come down for a funeral, unfortunately, but
okay. Yeah, you won't be far away for sure.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No worries.
My name's John. We are from, I'm on this call with Mike Kaufman, who's up in one of those boxes as well. We're from Indianola Community Church in Indianola, Iowa. And Mike was down at that XP conference and really excited about what this might do, just to help take some of the stuff we do at church and take it outside of the building. We had a great Easter weekend for us. Good Friday, we tried just a different setup in our sanctuaries. We wanted to reflect on sin, and it was a cool moment as we sat on Good Friday as we sat in a round, and to my right, there was this 8-year-old girl. I could hear her singing her heart out. And to my left, we have one of our staff has a special needs daughter, and she's singing her heart out. And that was just this moment of, oh yeah, that's why Jesus came for all of us. So it was just it was a really special Good Friday, really special week. And so, I'm looking forward to what God's going to continue to do here at ICC.
Amen.
Yeah, follow up, John there. My name is Mike. And ditto to everything you said about the product. When I think reflect on the Easter weekend, it was neat to hear, actually to watch the people as they walked out of the auditorium into the lobby just on Friday evening, as we created a different atmosphere than we normally do. Just more of a somber atmosphere, and encourage people just kind of leave and kind of just in a quiet type way. Just the flood of emotions of people coming out into the lobby area was just really cool. I mean, there were tears, there were hugs. It was just people looking at, the gravity of her sin, but knowing we're coming to Sunday, the Savior to take that away. That was just a neat opportunity. And just to, kind of like you guys said, to have a much larger crowd again. Just in the last few weeks, we've seen just some bigger crowds, even before Easter. And just to see our staff and volunteers pull together and just do that so smoothly, it's just pretty neat to see the wheels working well.
Thanks for sharing, Mike.
My name's Tim Perkins, and I'm with a church called The Ridge in Columbus, Indiana, which is about an hour south of Indianapolis. This last weekend at Easter, same sort of thing, a lot of faces that we just hadn't seen in a really, really long time. And then a ton of new faces was pretty exciting. Within the last couple weeks, some of the most exciting things for us that have been happening is we filled 2 pastoral staff positions, one that was open for 9 months and one that was open for a year. And so that's huge. While that means there's a lot of work coming still, but some things we've been praying about for actually one of the positions for a year this week is when we posted that it opened. So, and neither of the 2 individuals that we have filled the positions with, if they would have known about it at the time, they weren't like in a position to be looking. So God it's just perfect timing, and I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you so much, everyone, for just getting us started. I know we've got 50 minutes left. Well, we've just had Sean McKean enter. Maybe we'll give him a minute to introduce himself. We've got, I think, a couple more people who are supposed to join today's call. We've got another call on Tuesday the 26th. So we'll send out the recordings for both, just in case you want to know who else is there. But let me just see if Sean's here. Sean, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Sean, we were just getting started. Everybody was just introducing themselves. You missed all the other introductions, but we'll send the recording just to know who else is on the call with you. Could you just tell us which church you're with, where you are, and one cool thing that happened this past Easter weekend?
Yeah, for sure. Sean McKean, I'm executive pastor at the church at Rock Creek in Little Rock, Arkansas. Cool thing that happened, we had a ton of people that have not been to church since COVID. And we actually had 2 or 3 people that had told us that they thought the walls were going to fall down when they came in, and they didn't. And so praise Jesus that he accepts everybody, no matter where you're at in whatever stage you are in life. So yeah, those were some really cool things that happened.
So the walls didn't crumble.
They did not crumble.
It was an anti-Jericho moment.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So I'm just trying to be a pastor and feel like one of you guys. All right. Well, thank you so much. We were just getting started. I want to take the next 10-20 minutes, just walk you through a slide deck that a part of which I had shared at X-Pastor. So some of you may have seen some of it, but some of you guys are new to this concept. So I wanted to make sure we run Bleat by you, philosophically what we're trying to do, and practically the tool that we would love to build for you. So I want to run that about for 20 minutes. And then at the end, I want to open this up for a little Q&A, because you might have some questions. We're recording the call. We'd love to learn, hey, when you see this, what do you think? When you think about this practically in your church, what are questions you might have? At the end, I then want to go back to 3 specific questions that I want to ask you guys. And then as we wrap up, I just want to ask a housekeeping question about our next call at the end of May. Our typical plan for each month, we have a timeline slide and I can walk you through it. Our plan for each month of this journey together is to give you guys a question or questionnaire like the one you fill early on in the first week of the month, and then give you guys this time to go through it and give us some quick thoughts. And at the end of the month, we'll have a call together for 1 hour and just walk through where we are, what updates we have. Here's a soft launch, here's a tool to use, and to show you where we are and how we've incorporated the feedback that you shared with us early on in the month. So let me just start. Feel free to ping me if you have any questions in between. Hopefully the next 15, 20 minutes, I can show you our slide deck and what we're building. We'll do a little bit of Q&A for 10 minutes after that. And then I want to ask you guys 3 questions, and then we can wrap it up in 45 minutes. Alrighty, so if there isn't much of a question, let me start by sharing my screen. Can you please just let me know if you can see this, see what I'm sharing? Perfect. All right, so I'm gonna try and wrap this up in 15 minutes. We wanted to actually solve for greater discipleship. And so after running a lot of focus groups in the past almost a year, we've come up with what we think is a personalized discipleship platform, or that's the journey we're on. And then people ask me, hey, what do you mean by personalized? And I tell them, before that, let me tell you what we mean by discipleship. And what we're trying to build is something that will help church leaders like you engage personally at scale. So the first thing they ask is, what do you mean by personalized? And second thing they say is, wait, that's an oxymoron. How do you engage personally, but also engage at scale? Like both of those can't happen, can it? And so we want to start with what we define personalization as. Now, you have probably used a lot of the brands on the screen. You've probably even used at least 2 on every row. And the single common thing with all of them is that they've all personalized how we use the service. The more you watch YouTube, the more you listen to Spotify, the more it will recommend your options that serve you better. The more you drink, the more you bike, Peloton will teach you what next to do. And so what we're doing is, can we figure out if the same thing is applicable in the church space, and can we help make it more personalized? And so people say, hey, is that really possible? Because the church is a different place altogether. And I want to draw us to an example from the Bible, and 2 contrasting examples, and they are both in Luke 18 and Luke 19. So in Luke 18, this rich young ruler, he comes to Christ and he asks him, good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And he says, well, sell all your possessions, give your money to the poor, your treasure will be in heaven, and then follow me. And in Luke 19, Jesus goes to meet Zacchaeus where he is. Zacchaeus had no plan, or no question about salvation at all. And then Jesus tells the rich young ruler to sell everything, and if you do that, you will inherit eternal life. And sadly, that man is not able to do it, and he walks away disappointed. Jesus, on the other hand, he walks to Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus is not even in his house, he's on a tree. Jesus tells him, Zacchaeus, come down, for tonight I must stay with you at your house. And Jesus does not tell him a word about the salvation, as far as the scripture says. And then Zacchaeus, the next verse, Zacchaeus says, and he says something fascinating. He says, here and now, I give away half my money to the poor, I 4x those who hurt me. And then Jesus says, today salvation has already come to your house. So how is it that 2 people in 2 different walks of life, one who came to Jesus and one Jesus went to, they both got 2 different concepts of the most unattainable thing, salvation? Thankfully, I'm not the pastor in the room. I'm not the one who's went to seminary, so I don't have to answer that question. I just want to try and use this to say, is this something that Jesus taught us way before, that it could be really personalized for each person, even as something as mysterious as salvation? So we were trying to see, what did this look like if we actually help salvation at the end, engagement in church, be personalized to each person who comes in? Because we are already used in the last 5 to 10 years, we're already used to personalization in almost every walk of life. Every brand tells us what to do next. In my personal opinion, Netflix is the world's best recommendation engine. It just happens to show you movies as a side business. And so can we think of personalization as a practical thing that helps people engage really well? We had a lot of focus groups, and we always ask pastors, what's the number 1 problem that you want to solve for? And they would all say engagement. And that's what we're driving towards. So we define discipleship as having a crux, and we try to understand what are we doing the same way for a long time. And we find out that church leaders are always depending on one-way interactions with the entire congregation. From 10 a.m. to 10:45 a.m., we're going to have a sermon where one person preaches to many. We send you an email blast where the communication tells all of you what to do, even though technically I could reply to it. We stock up our mobile app with lots of great resources for us to tell the congregation what to consume. Mostly we see that there's one-way interactions and we wonder if tweaking that slightly might start to solve the problem. Secondly, we also might tend to consider the entire church with one master stroke than as an individual congregant. So what we're trying to do with Bleat is to see, can we help you guys? Can we be Aaron and Hur and come alongside the Moses that you are and help provide an option for two-way engagement? And can we also at the same time personalize it for each congregant in your church? So let me show you practically what this means. As a brand, we're trying to do something that we feel you guys are called to. We want to help you make better decisions and more disciples. We want you to be the good shepherd modeled after the great shepherd. And for that, all we're trying to do is to help you listen to the voice of your own sheep so that you can make better decisions, which we feel will lead to more disciples. And that's what we're all called to in the Great Commission. So let me start with now that was philosophically what we're trying to do. Let me start with practically where we're going. So this is the German psychologist, Hermann Ebbinghaus, fabulous study. I came across it recently. I came across it after the ex-pastor event. So the stat is recent. It says that most humans forget more than 70% of what they hear within the first 24 hours. Now, we ran a lot of focus groups with pastors to ask them, how long does it take for you to typically prepare for a sermon on the weekend? And they gave us numbers anywhere between 2 to 3 to 4 hours, all the way to 24 hours in a week to prepare for the sermon. Clearly, we're talking about a pastor whose only job is the weekend sermon when he has 24 hours. But even then, there's a lot of time spent on a sermon. And after the sermon, we wondered if the same principle is applicable. Now, it turns out, yes, because at the event at ex-pastor, there were about 150 pastors in the room. And I asked them this question. This is real-time data from the event. I asked them, I quickly put this up on the screen. I asked them to engage us with on the phones. Some of you may remember this. And 68 pastors in the room immediately said that, I asked them by which day do congregants forget the sermon they heard over the weekend? By Sunday, by Monday, majorly if it's on Sunday, by Tuesday, by Wednesday, by here, like almost 90+% of the people have forgotten what they heard over the weekend, which I feel is very sad because the pastor takes so much time to prepare for the sermon. The sermon is almost always the fundamental part or even the biggest part of any weekend service. And sadly, the word itself is falling on rocky soil and thorns. There are a couple of cases here, but I'm sure this is a senior pastor who was there and who feels that nobody ever forgets his sermon. But apart from that, we felt that this would be a real lack and loss because the Bible itself in James 1:23, the word itself says, do not merely hear the word and deceive yourself, do what it says. So we're wondering, what does it look like when we think about the doing part? So I asked them the next question at the event. How likely is the average congregant going to take action on the message of the weekend sermon? Again, about 85 people responded real time on their phones. And you can see significantly about 70 people are either not likely to take action, very least likely, or neutral responses. Only 15 out of 85, which is about 18%. Only 15%, about 18% of the people thought that we're likely to take any action on the sermon that you and your co-pastors are preaching. So I'm not asking a congregant, I'm not asking an outsider, I'm asking you pastors. And they agreed that very few people are actually likely to take action on the sermon. Now, the next question is what I ended with. And I asked them 3 options. I don't want to show it first because as soon as I show that the screen changes because it's interactive and dynamic. I asked them, now let's assume I heard the sermon on the weekend and I remembered it for some time and I thought I will go and take some action. If I go to do all that, how many of you are tracking what I'm doing? And I gave them 3 options. I said yes, but not well enough, and I said no. So there are 3 options, but you will see quickly. So there are 3, but only, there's no concept of yes. I asked them, are you tracking if congregants are taking action about us, tracking if we're taking action during the weekend sermon? And 0% said yes. 7% out of 87 said that, yeah, we're tracking, but not well enough. And I must appreciate the honesty of our pastoral group, who 93% of which said, no, we are not taking any action. And so I understand why we're here. And that's the one thing that we want to try and solve and see, can we serve you guys, bear greater fruit in the lives of our people with the effort that your pastors are already taking by preaching the word on the weekend. So I showed an example, and I just want to show that again for those who who were not there that day. So I showed them this is what it would look like if we were to try and do this differently. So I said, let's just, I'm using the same slides from them. This was way back in Feb of 2022. So I told them, let's assume that I was preaching this weekend, and let's assume I'm talking about a simple topic called spousal submission. How hard can that get? And so I said, as I'm done at the end of the sermon, I'm going to point people to taking action. And I want to tell them, hey, all of this 45 minutes I preached and all of the 10 hours I prepared is meaningless if you're just going to forget this sermon. So what I want to do is to ask you, how many of you will commit to taking some kind of action with me? And the action is very simple. You can either go to a link, or you can text it from your phones, or as many of you have mobile apps in your churches, maybe we'll integrate it with your mobile apps directly, or just scan the QR code. As soon as you do any one of these actions, it quickly opens up a page like this on your phone. And I want to say, hey, spousal submission, that's level 10, that's too complicated. Let's start with something very, very simple. Let's at least appreciate my spouse. Spousal appreciation level 1 today. We'll talk about submission later on. And I give the option, hey, I commit to action. I'm not ready yet, or this is not applicable to me. I'm not married, or I don't have a spouse. And so as soon as people see this on their phones real time, and they choose to click any one of these 3 buttons, real time on the screen, like I showed you with our real time tools, you will be able to see how many people are choosing which option to engage. Now, all the data is anonymous, so you don't know who said what, but overall you'd see how many responses are there. So let's assume there were 1,000 people in your church that, when I was preaching, and then about 500 of them responded on their phones. Say about 330 people said, yes, we will commit to this action. 105 said, my wife and I were not there. My husband and I this is not a good time for us, so we're going to pass. And about 15% said, I'm not married, don't have a spouse, not applicable to me. So technically there are about 330 people who are agreeing to doing what the pastor asked them to do. Now, this does not have to be spousal appreciation alone. It could be something as simple as reading the Bible, as praying, as inviting your neighbor for a meal, giving to a cause, could be serving in church, could be any one of the things that we want to practically ask them to do what the word teaches apart from merely hearing. Now, as soon as they say that we are going to do it, what they will get is an option to schedule a reminder on their phones for when to do it. So typically people can choose all 7 days, or maybe you can decide how many days they want to do it, or you can leave it at them to decide. Maybe you say, hey, you know what, 7 is too much, 4 is too much. Maybe start with 1. Maybe I just want you to read the Bible, pray once a week, or invite a neighbor over to talk once a week or once a month. You decide what the frequency is, or you let them decide. And you pick the dates like you would set up an alarm clock, and then you choose the timing for that particular time, saying, I commit to appreciating my spouse this week. Just remind me at that time. And sure enough, we'll say, thank you so much for your commitment. Whatever days you set, whatever times you set, because we've all used alarm clocks on our phones, we'll remind you at that time to appreciate your spouse. And sure enough, at that particular day, we will send you a reminder at the time you chose, saying, hey, Tim, here's your reminder for appreciating your spouse today. Or Sean, here's your reminder for inviting your neighbor over for dinner. All the best. And we'll say, we'll check in with you in 30 minutes if you were able to do that. And sure enough, in 30 minutes, we'll reach out and say, hey, were you able to appreciate your spouse today? And you can tell us, yes, I was able to do it, or no, I'm not home yet, or snooze, no, it doesn't look like that's going to happen today. You can tell us whatever works. And until you tell us yes or a no, we will keep snoozing, so we can check in if you were able to do what you committed to doing. The best part, we feel, is that real time, you pastors have a dashboard that'll tell you, hey, across the board, how many people committed to appreciating the spouse and how many actually completed that action. So you can see it on Sunday, you can see it on Monday, on Tuesday and Wednesday. The particular day I showed this happened to be a Thursday, so you can see it real time as the day that we're currently living through. Friday and Saturday will come, and then this data will be filled. You can also see what does completion engagement look like this week versus the past week. So it looks like more people are starting to actually listen to what I say. And importantly, what this means is that when 330 people said that they will commit to action, let's say on average 3 times a week, that's 1,000 instances of people in your congregation doing the one thing that you preached and asked them to do. And you get to track this real time across the whole week and see, when are people doing what we're asking them to do? Why? Maybe a lot of people didn't do it on Monday. Why was it a fall off? Maybe it was a long weekend. We understand. So you get to figure out, what is the data? What is it telling you? Are people engaging? So that there is no vacuum between your Sunday and the next Sunday. This way, when you come back next week, you can say, hey, Last week, I talked about spousal appreciation. Well done, church. See what you've done. I'm glad that you were able to appreciate spouse. And I've got some testimonies from people who felt a huge change when they were able to appreciate each other. This week, let's go a little further. Let's go to maybe step 2 of spousal submission. So you get to see this as a church pastor, as a preaching pastor, as an executive pastor. At the same time, we want to give this functionality over to life group leaders. Everything is anonymous, but as a life group leader of 10, I might get to see there are 10 people in my life group, and 2 of them have not done this at all. 3 of them have done this, and 1 person has done it every day, and 4 people did it just 3 times a week. So I might be able to invite people to say, hey, we talked about spousal appreciation this week. Why were you guys able to appreciate, or why were you not able to appreciate? Feel free to share what you know. Let's at least help, and as iron sharpens iron, help our families become more appreciative of one another. So our goal is to see, can we also sync the life group to what you're doing over the weekend? Can you open up people to communicate by making it anonymous and empowering them with no data, no tracking at the back end? Everything is anonymous, and they get to tell you what they're doing and slowly share their walk with Christ with you, and take action on the one thing that you're telling at the end of the week. So that's mostly what we wanted to show you as a tool that we're trying to build out for you. This is our timeline plan. We're kicking off this month in April. Our goal is to start getting an MVP into your hands by the end of May. So hopefully by the next time we talk on the Zoom call by the end of May, we'd have something to pass on to you or show you what we've learned from you. Early May, we're going to ask you some questions, get some feedback from you, incorporate it, build out something to try out. By June 1, we want to be able to give you a soft launch tool in your hands that you can maybe do in a small audience, a life group with your staff, see what that looks like. In July, hopefully we can collect all the feedback from you. And maybe by August, we can get you a launchable product so that you can have things ready before the school season starts again in September. So that's been our goal so far. I've taken 15 minutes. My mom has taught me don't speak for more than 15 minutes at a stretch. So I'm going to pause, thank the Lord for my mom, and then ask you guys, this is what we want to share philosophically. This is what we want to share practically. For about 10 minutes, can I ask you, what are some quick thoughts, some quick questions that come to mind? The question that you have on your mind very well will be on somebody else's mind too. So please feel free to go ahead and share. Happy to try and answer, or at least get it answered for you soon.
Does the reminder come from your app or from your programming, or does the reminder come, you had said it's on my calendar, for the reminder. Is that internally on our phones from the phone's reminder, or is it from something you're sending out?
That's a good question. So one of the questions I'm going to ask you after this is about mobile app versus texting. And so if you already have a text service, we would integrate it with your texting option. If you're doing texting, if you're doing mobile apps, it would be integrated with your mobile app, because we don't want the question to come from us. We want a question to come from the pastor himself. Hey, were you able to do this? You asked me to remind you, were you able to do it? Or the church or the executive pastor. So it's from your brand, not from us. I mean, that's what we're gunning for. Sorry, Sean, can't hear you.
The follow-up, sorry about that. The follow-up would be, so you're working with PushPay, SecureGive, whoever else.
Flash, those guys to get these apps up. The integrations directly with those apps. There are about 6, 7 in total that I think are serving 90% of the churches.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So my question was along the same lines, and if we're, we use Tithely instead of PushPay. We've got we communicate to our church through CCB, is a lot of our mass communication with them, and we have our own guy in our church who runs a media company. He wrote our church app, and so we're kind of not in a conventional pathway. I mean, I guess maybe do you link up to any of those? Tithely isn't really we don't really use it as a communication platform, but is it kind of your software kind of streamlined into really just those mainstream apps that accommodate 90% of the churches, or is there some a la carte kind of options or something for folks like us who are kind of have built our own network?
So again, we're building this as we speak.
Sure.
We are aiming to we're trying to see what's the easiest barrier to entry across. The starting point would be publicly facing brands that already have APIs in place. trying with a standalone option at the start. Can we know, is it something privately written, or is it a tool, a different app that we know about?
No, I don't know the technical aspects of it. I just know we didn't go a conventional route to, I mean, the guy owns his own marketing company and he wrote our church app. And, we've got push notifications and whatnot. I'd have to get you in
Sure.
contact with the guy to find out, hey, yeah, that's actually easily integrated with our software or not.
Sure.
I don't know.
Well, now that I know you and the question you're asking, I can follow up with you and see, and maybe ask that person to what he's doing, so we can figure out a way to see if that integrate. We ideally want to integrate later. We want to make sure we can give a standalone option that you can use quickly, branded in your church name, and then hopefully we can figure out. I mean, there might be some churches who are using different tools like you are. So I'll follow up with you and find out. Sorry, go on.
Well, even if I mean, I love the data that this provides clearly, and coming from our brand would be ideal, but I wouldn't want to walk away if we couldn't make it work with that. I mean, is there an app outside of that? Because I know sometimes you can download a different app or something that kind of communicates, that isn't ideal, but it is an option.
So that's one of I've got 3 questions about engaging, testing, and launching. So what we're trying to do is first to do a standalone app where you can just download it, you can rebrand it, and you can use it. And so that it looks like yours, but comes from you. And it might be a standalone option for those who find that easier to use, if that's what you're asking. We're
Yes,
trying to do standalone first, integration later, and exploring text options along with it.
Okay.
And for what it's worth, I'm with Micah. We have CCB and an in-home app. So we're looking at a push pay app that kind of comes with CCB, but we haven't started using it yet. So we're pretty much in the same boat that they are.
Okay. Well, this is great insight for CCB that people do not want to use their texting option, but don't worry, we're not showing.
Are the responses back to people, are they customizable?
Yes. So
Okay.
So what we want to do, some of the questions that I asked pastors, what would make this work for you? Oh, wait, when you asked responses from people, did you mean the one you're sending or the one they're sending?
The one that the church would send back to our congregants.
The one you're sending, or the one you're sending is always customizable. So
Okay.
what pastors told us is, I don't want to have to involve my team. I want to be able to do something because I'm preaching, and I want to be able to do something that's easily done by myself or one person. We don't want a whole team to do this. We don't want to add more work to their plate. So what we want to do is give you an option, change the question every time, change the thing that you're asking them to do, and change how you want to get them to reply to you. Yes, I did. No, I didn't. Tell me later. Give us 3-4 options, and you can pick which one of those. So every Sunday when you're done preaching, change the question and change the answers they must give you, either yes, no, or if they're texting, give me a 1 or 2, or texting with yes and no, things like that. So it'll be a fixed slot, but you can change the text.
I was thinking more along the lines of during the week, the follow-ups of, like your example was, did you spend quality time with your spouse or whatever? Was that customizable?
Yes. Every week you get to choose the question you want. I mean, every week only because you're running a weekend sermon, but anytime you want, maybe 7 days a week, even for that matter, you get to change the question that you're asking people to take.
Okay.
I mean, it is customizable every time you ask a question. Okay, this is great. Thank you for these questions. It's very helpful to know what you're thinking about. Let me know if you have more before I jump to my 3 questions.
I have a question that I would assume would be the case, how it would be designed, but that you can use it in any setting, like the youth pastor wants to use it with the youth group, or like you had said before, the small group leader, not only does he get the info, but if they wanted to use it because they're doing a particular study, can that be done that way? Is it add a layer of management to it that's a little more complex, or? So
that's why I said any number of days. That's where we eventually want to go to. Ideally, you're preaching once a week as your main pastor does, preaching pastor, main pastor, senior pastor, whoever does it for the weekend sermon, Saturday, Sunday, whichever day it is. Now, through the week, you might have a midweek stuff on Wednesday. Your youth might meet up on a Thursday. Again, if you're trying to get them to take action, we want to be able to provide multiple accounts, multiple seats so that you can ask different questions. Now, while the pastor's main week in appreciating the spouse, that might be going on for all 7 days of measurement. Over time, we want to give multiple seats, like you have multiple seats in the SAS tool when you use Slack. You get to ask another question with your youth that's only for 2 days. You get to ask another question for your parents and for 5 days. So they're all separate questions that can be measured for a whole week.
Yep.
And we want them to be able to exist together in parallel while the main pastor is measuring his, the life group leader is measuring his, youth pastor is measuring his.
Yep.
Okay. I'm just going to wait to see if you have any more questions before I start jumping into mine. Alrighty, so let me start again. Feel free to interrupt me. Before I go practically to the 3 things: engaging, testing, and launching, I want to ask philosophically, do you guys, first of all, I'm thankful that you guys said yes to being in our beta group, which means that you're interested. Philosophically, does it make sense? I'm hoping it is because you're here on the call. 2, what could be objections that pastors have to not doing this? So we've been asking so many people, why wouldn't you do it? And some people say, it's not trackable. It's not something that the churches wants to solve. We have so many other bigger problems. Just trying to learn from you guys. Why are you here and some other pastors not? What might be objections and how can we help them understand what you have, but they haven't? Philosophically, like why are you here and some guys not?
Well, I can just speak for some feedback that I got in 2020, I think it was, maybe it was 2019. I was out at that XP conference, and I think it was Dave Travis who did a session on big data for churches and using data in intelligent ways to be able to pastor people better. You know, I was pretty excited about it and enjoyed the talk and everything that you said. I clicked and got it. I came back and talked to our board about it, our elders, and was talking with them, was all excited, and they just looked at it. They've since, it took some time, as with anything, you come up with an idea and people have to close the gap for a little, in a little time, but it to them felt like we were using manipulation tactics to do things. There's a part of it, a couple of those guys, it weirds them out, in their mind, they're just thinking about a Pepsi product. They don't think they've said anything. And then there's a Pepsi ad. So they think, man, my phone's listening or something's happening. And I'm like, you've done things you didn't realize to tell an algorithm that you're interested in Pepsi. And so now the ad comes, but they look at it as some kind of voodoo or something. I don't know. For some of the feedback I was getting was the pushback of like, hey, we're not into manipulating things and doing that. And it was actually Dave Travis had approached it because I had some ammo to come back at him that, we use data all the time now, but we use word of mouth because so-and-so says this and so-and-so says that. So now I go have a conversation because somebody came and talked to me, and it was a lot for them to take in. I was pretty excited. I'd come back with that, and then something else, from it doesn't matter, but another deal, I come back and they were like, we don't know if we're sending this guy to Dallas again, but it was there was a couple of ideas that in that time, now we had COVID that really benefited us, our ministry and mindset and everything. Some of the things that our elders were stuck on, you had no choice but to now examine and look at. And so we crashed through some of that. But when you're talking about some of the hesitations, that was a couple of the initial ones that we ran into, that people thought we were, just trying to manipulate people and right. Not, and it's just the way they viewed it. And so that's some of the feedback that I received on that. So for whatever that may be.
Yeah, we'll prepare, I guess, about helping the pastor communicate alignment, bringing them around, making sure they got what you got. Okay, this is helpful to know. Any other objections you think, or go on?
Which that might be something, just a question. You might be doing this anyway to send out that slide deck, because I'd like to be able, what you just did, the overview. I remember doing that at X-Pastor, but if you felt comfortable with it, I don't know. I would want to talk to our some of our key leaders and make it like that beta group and explain to them what you just did, or maybe a copy of this recording. I don't know if you're comfortable with that. I know it's all still closed right now, but I need more people and certainly other leaders to see what we saw at X-Pastor and what you just reminded me about unpacking. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I love that. And I wanted, and I need to be able to share that vision. You might already have a couple of videos that tells it way better than a slide deck. I don't know, but I'm going to need to cast some vision with them.
This is really helpful. That's a great idea. So you will have the recording, or we'll be emailing you the recording, the link to the recording. I will also send you a PDF, not knowing which one works better. And just personally, I'd love to know if that helps you. Like, our whole entire point is about aligning leadership around change. So if whatever we can do to help you align them, that would be a great learning for us. This is really helpful. Thank you so much, Micah. And
Micah, were you at XP? Were you at XP this past February?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so did you see Kieran's talk?
I did. Yep.
So that's online, and I've showed it to several people here, including our senior teaching pastor who is not there. So it is available. You just got to go to the X-Pastor website and log in, and it's all out there.
It is. When you have leaders' attention, I don't want them, no offense. I don't want him to sit through a 40-minute presentation of it. I want to be able to condense it and say in 10 minutes what you just did. 10 minutes, walk you through that.
It's a 14
they don't want to
minute.
go through the whole.
Yeah, it's 14 minutes
deal. Yeah.
So he had his block, his 1 hour block, but he also had the 14-minute presentation with everybody, and that's recorded. The 14-minute one. So
the one you're talking about, I'll send you all three. I'll send you my talk. There was 13-14 minutes. It was about this, and the interaction was real time. The one that I showed you with the 3 exercises. I'll send you this recording too, and I'll send you the PDF. Feel free to tell us which one works so we can learn.
All right. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Karen, ours is a little different. We have 3 pastors that preach: our senior pastor, a teaching pastor, and our next gen pastor. For us, it's kind of age driven. Our teaching pastor is 68 years old, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but technology for him on stage, it would be difficult for him to be able to utilize technology. I think it would throw him off from his delivery. And so our senior pastor and next gen pastor, we've actually done this years ago with, I couldn't even tell you how we got the software and stuff. But anyway, for them, it's a great tool, especially for our senior pastor and for our next generation's pastor when they preach on Sunday mornings. And then, you answered this a while ago for me. We have several different pastor-led Bible studies that are going on Monday night and Wednesday night and stuff like that. And so I would think it would be another opportunity for us to engage with our people and get feedback from them throughout the week, and keep them engaged in whatever the topic was that was being taught on Monday night or Wednesday night also. So that's kind of where we're at. So just FYI for your thought process through this. We just have one of our he's a very good pastor. I don't want anybody to think we're taking anything away from him. His delivery and his heart and everything is fantastic, but to utilize technology on a Sunday morning would probably not be good.
Well, so the question is, I'm assuming you guys have a slide when he has a slide, a projector, a screen behind him when he talks?
Yeah,
you have 1, 2. Okay. So if it's possible for anyone to ask him, what's the question that you want to ask people to do? I don't know if any one of you in your team, I'm assuming that's a large team with multiple preaching pastors themselves, can just load a question for him. And like I showed on my screen, this is all the screen needs to say. Like, you click do any one of these things, and he says, and I have one question for you, and people can then see it on their phone. So technically, he does not need to do anything technologically on screen. He just needs to tell them the question, and he needs to tell them if you can go do any one of these 4 things or whatever you guys decide to do best. When you're smiling, I don't know if you think that sentence itself is
no, well, I appreciate that. I really do. But it would take time for him to get comfortable to
Around.
that where, yes. So
Okay. Well,
not
our
saying
goal
he
is
would never use it. I'm just
No,
saying
no,
it would
got it.
be, the other two would have to actually kind of introduce him and bring him in, through it. And I appreciate the simplicity of that. And maybe he could, but I would say not right away.
Got it. Well, our goal is that if Paul was preaching today, we were hoping he would be using Bleat. And so we will try and build towards pastors across all ages, all styles of preaching. Some people don't want necessarily interaction at the end. So this is a good learning experience for us.
Yeah, I think kind of what you said, Kurian, and kind of like what Sean was saying there. I think of our previous lead pastor before John. He'd be like a mule staring at a new gate, like, I don't know what to do with this. And Dewey's like, yeah, let's do it. You've got pastors of all different capabilities when it comes to technology. So as you present your product, that's probably a good thing to say, hey, if you've got a team member or something like this, they can do all this background work for you. All you've got to say is that one big takeaway for the week, here's a way for you to engage it. So I think it's a good point because pastors have different gifts. So as you kind of sell it to people, letting them know that, hey, someone else in your team can do this work for you. And here's the benefit. If they can see that benefit of people interacting with the product and they can see someone else doing that work for them, then all they have to do is do that. Then it's an easier sell job to them. Well, I think our old pastor would do it if we let him know, hey, you don't have to do anything with it. We're doing all this and this is going to happen. You're like, oh yeah, well, that sounds good. So all you have to do is say, look at the screen. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thanks, Mike, for saying the same thing. Like Sean, so maybe when the other two pastors can give this a shot, he gets to see over time that this is not that complicated. But thank you, even for opening our eyes to that. Alrighty, any last questions? If not, I want to jump to any other objection, anything else that we can learn from you guys? Alrighty, so I'll keep going. I've got 10 minutes left. I got a couple of questions. The most important one, you guys wrote different responses in my questionnaire. I asked you, would you want to test this with a smaller audience, with a life group, with your staff? And responses were across the board. So if we were to roll this out for you to launch this internally, what do you mean by a smaller audience? Just to get a gauge for what's practical. Are you aiming for something with your staff internally, with life group leaders, with one or two particular life group pilots, with a subset of some kind of an audience? Just gauge where can we try this out first, so that you are running this well before you launch.
I would use my staff first myself. I would do that internally a couple of times, and then a couple of my top level groups that I know could facilitate something like that without getting, too in the weeds. The real-time data is something fun to play with. I think that's neat, but I don't know if I'd utilize that as much as the action steps that I think would be good. I could use real-time data with staff in different meetings, but I like I'd probably do it with staff first, and then if that went well, they could work out some bugs, and probably a couple of them with lead groups, I would let them do it. It would probably be the cascading event I would deploy.
Okay, thank you. Dale, you were saying?
Yeah, I think we would do staff, and we have a young adults group that meets weekly of about 60 people, and they're all used to this kind of stuff. So I think that would probably be a good group to start with. And it's led by our senior teaching pastor. So it would give him an opportunity to try it out on a smaller group, a well-educated group, and see how it works.
Sounds good. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Any
that would have been my only reason for saying a smaller group would be testing it internally, making sure everybody understands how it's working and how to use it best. I don't think it would be far from then using it in a service once everybody was comfortable. Just like anything else, before we would do a bigger launch, we would have a soft test. So yeah.
So to summarize, internally first with your staff team, maybe they have, like Michael was saying, maybe they're already leading a couple of groups, or you do with your young adults, separate services, test it out internally, and then consider a bigger scale. Is that correct? Okay. All right.
Yeah,
well,
I think we would do the same. We're kind of do it as a staff, but we're kind of big proponents of, we're even trying something this weekend for some interaction, going, hey, we tell our church, we're going to try this. Hopefully it works really well. And if it doesn't, we're church family. So if it doesn't, that's all right. So we would try it with staff and work a few bugs out. But like Tim had said, I don't think it'd be long before we'd go, all right, let's roll this out and get some of the benefit. And I agree with Mike. I think that real-time data on the screen is probably less of use for our people than just those responses. And that real-time data behind the scenes for us as staff going, hey, how do we plan better? How do we ask better? Would probably be where we would end up with a lot of that at.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I
real-time
think
data.
that,
Sorry, Tim. Keep
I
going.
was just going to say, I think that real-time data side of it, while the response piece might be a regular thing, real-time data might just be the topic or how the pastor wants to use it, or what that is. It might not be as frequently used on the screen, but depending on the topic or what the interaction, because we've done some live interaction things where I'm like, oh, this would be a great way to capture everybody in that sense. So yeah.
So the real-time data thing is only for you guys. It's for your own screens, for your accounts. It's not for the congregant to see. You get to see it throughout the whole week, updated real time. So definitely for you. This is very helpful.
Quick question, Karen. When you displayed this at the ex-pastor conference, you had on the screen, you could see the red dots going to the different answers. Is that a capability that this could do during a service?
So those capabilities already exist. The one I showed happens to be a tool called Mentimeter that already exists today. We don't have that built today, but again, as we're building the tool, those are definitely things we want to give. Like ideally, we want to build a longer term engagement during the sermon. Like when you preach about Ephesians 5, some people don't know where Ephesians in the Bible. So maybe we give them more chances to engage with you throughout. So those things we're planning for later. But at this point, we're trying to just get them to take one action, because that's
right.
where
that's what I mean. From that one action, you could see 13 people respond, and now it's 25, now it's 45. Yeah. And there's a little bit of peer pressure that happens with that in the room. So that's my question. During the message, would you see how many are responding on the screen?
Yeah, let me show you what I think you. Let me just pull my screen up again. So I feel that. So when you guys were there, Dallas, and I asked you this question, as soon as I asked you, the dots were moving like this, if that's what you were talking about. And so ideally, correct. when you show them, when you ask them to take this action, and then you keep the screen up, these numbers will start moving and the numbers will keep changing, which means you're seeing people take action. They're like, hey, they're doing something, maybe I should also do it. So this is the one screen that I would keep up as a pastor. I ask the question, tell them to take some action, and I keep the screen. The numbers keep populating up. And this is the only screen they see, encouraging them to take action because their peers are already taking action. This screen, this one, this is for you guys. They never see this screen. This is for your accounts. So we're trying to get both of them in place. The other one happens to be a tool that we use called Mentimeter. But again, we're trying to get started with the chance for them to action and hopefully put those pieces into.
Cool.
All right. One key question is our launch time, our goal around August, is that a good time to launch something new? People are thinking of back to school, figuring out how kids, new schools, just all that stuff in place. Typically, when do you guys launch stuff? Is it in August, September? Is it once they're back in the groove in October? Just to ask, when do you launch new things, especially because you need to get them to take some action, just to get a sense of the calendar.
I think you're on the
ministry. Go ahead.
I think you're on the money. That's a typical for about anybody. It's going to be a changing of focus, themes, sermon series, what have you. So groups kick off for us. We'll have different. There's a lot of things kick off. It is a natural spot. Get to go back to school. It's a good spot to do something.
Okay. Anybody else with a differing viewpoint about that? Okay, that sounds good. Are you guys by any chance later this year thinking of introducing any similar tech tools, just to know, hey, you guys have a bigger priority here, just to weave this alongside?
No.
Okay, that's good to know too. I want to do just two things. One, I want to say our next goal. Thank you so much for your time today. I do want to send out a link. I'll show you the link. What I want to find out is the timings that you're available for in May. I'll just share my screen to show you how we're doing this. so that we can find time that really works for everyone. I'm going to send out a link like this. It will have all your names here. Feel free to just go here, click on edit, and feel free to pick the slots that work for you. Just give us all the slots that work for you across these days. We're looking for a slot that works for everyone in the latter half of May. So this is from May 19. Then there's Memorial Day, and there's one last day at the end on May 31. Please feel free to tell us all the slots that work for you so that we can pick one that works for everyone. So that, again, I was blessed by the interaction with you guys. I learned 3 things already that I've noted for the future. And like we were able to meet new people and learn from one another. It'll be great to have most of you together. So please give us it might take 30 seconds of your time with your calendar. Please tell us when you're available so that we can make sure this call happens in May when you are. The last thing I want to ask for today is, this could be something, I think what John was saying. In my church, we're in Richardson, Texas. So my pastor saw what we were doing. He was there at Ex-Pastor. And the next week he asked people, because the Bleat tool is not available yet, he asked people during the sermon to take one particular action. And then he said, if you will do this, can you please email me and tell me that you did it and what you experienced? So what I want to ask is, you can tell me yes, no, maybe. Is it possible for any one of your pastors to actually try out a simple thing manually, to ask them, I wanted you to do one thing. Can you try this out and can you tell us, or tell someone whether you were able to do it and what that looked like? Is for us just to test, if we were to automate the tool to do this automatically, would that make natural sense? Is that a small, John talked about something about trying this out as a church family and then, hey, work that didn't work. Is that practically possible? And feel free to say no or push back.
Yeah, for us, it would be. Yeah, we want to give whatever a shot we're in.
Okay. And
Yeah.
anybody else?
Yeah, it would be for us as well. I think it would fit right along with the challenges, even week to week. It'd be a very easy. I think our lead pastor would probably say, hey, I want it, like that's a great thing to ask people. I don't want to ask them that every time. So I want it to be this right thing right now. If Bleat exists, that makes it so much easier, but to ask them to email him, he would really want it to be one that counted, right?
Okay, that's great. All Bleat does is to automate the process of you asking and them acting. What we want to know is, can the asking and the acting happen even if Bleat was not there? Can we actually ask and act on the word with or without Bleat? So maybe sorry, Micah, go ahead.
Well, for us, we've done that. I agree with Tim. We've done multiple challenges like that before, whether it be a giving challenge or whether it be, there's several within CCB. There's process queues that as soon as somebody enacts a step, there's emails and text notifications and things that go out to remind people. And we've used that, like Tim said, it's not every sermon, it's not every series, but a couple of times throughout a year, if people are inviting people, who's the person you're bringing to Christmas, and there's invitation tools that are gone, and there's a series of emails that come. When there's a giving challenge, we do a 60-day giving challenge, and there's a series of emails that goes in action steps. And so we use CCB for that, but so what CCB doesn't do is give you the feedback that, yes, I did that. We do ask for feedback. We do ask for feedback, but we're kind of assuming that they did it. Or, with giving's easy because you can track that. That's easy to figure out. But we've used challenges and used access and data and that kind of thing. It would be really in step with what we've already done. So
that's what we're asking. Two things. One, can we actually ask them to let us know if they actually did it? Because we're all used to going to churches, we're all used to listening to pastors, we're all used to nodding our head when the pastor asks us to do something. All that works. Can we actually come and tell you whether we did what you told us to do? And secondly, by any chance, can it be something that's connected to the sermon so that we can actually act on the word that you just preached to us for 45 minutes versus an action that is separate, disconnected? Because we do listen when you tell us to do stuff. Can this be about us taking action scripturally from what you preached? So that's what I want to know. I'll try and follow up with you and ask if in the course of the month of May, you find one particular weekend where when you preach and you ask them to do something, and somehow just tell us if they were able to tell you that they did it or not. That's what we wanted to see if it would work. All right, well, thank you so much. I don't want to take more time. I know this is exactly 2 minutes off. So I'll send you an email. It'll have the link to the recording. I know, Micah, you mentioned about, I'll also put the other things, the link to the recording at, oh wait, I can only do that if you should be able to log into your Ex-Pastor account to watch it. I'll ask Fletch if I can get that video out and send it to you guys. I'll ask him if he would let me do that. And I'll send you the PDF of that slide deck if that helps. And I'll send you that particular link to just pick your slot for the next session. And we will follow up in May with some question in early May, and we look forward to talking to you at the end of May. Thank you so much for your time. Have a blessed week ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.